Imagine this. It's the 1940s. World War II is coming to a close and you live in Las Vegas. Vegas at this point is not very impressive, but you feel a big economic boom is coming soon. Perhaps something to do with casinos, but that's just a hunch. On a nice day in 1945, you decide to go out into the wide Nevada desert to see some true beauty. Very relaxing. What the fuck? It's the first nuclear bomb test, Trinity. Now, Trinity was the first nuclear bomb test that the US did, but it was definitely not the last one. In fact, the US has nuked itself, in a few different ways, over a long period of time during the Cold War. In this video, I'm going to recount the times the US voluntarily, or accidentally, nuked itself. In fact, the US is the only country to have ever nuked the US. Actually, I'd say that most countries that have ever had a nuclear bomb explode in their territory were fully self-inflicted. They were simply just testing their bomb. Well, except for Japan. Twice. Now, the US started testing their nuclear bombs in 1945 with the first successful detonation of a nuke. Now, between that 1945 day and 1992, the US tested 1,054 nuclear bombs. They mostly tested them on the ground, but they did some atmospheric and underwater tests too. One of these tests, in 1957, was named Project 57, appropriately named, and was designed to see if an accidental detonation would cause the nuclear bomb to explode. They wanted to see if a bomber carrying nukes crashed, would that cause the nukes to go off? Now, in an implosion-type nuclear bomb, like the one dropped on Nagasaki, a plutonium core is surrounded by a conventional explosive, arranged symmetrically. When these explosives are detonated, they create a powerful inward pressure that compresses the plutonium core into a supercritical state. This compression brings the plutonium atoms closer, dramatically increasing the likelihood of nuclear fission, a chain reaction where the atomic nuclei split, releasing massive amounts of energy almost instantly. Now, this is a vast oversimplification, and there are other types of nuclear bombs, such as gun-style nuclear bombs, and other ones that use different cores or use different materials, such as hydrogen and stuff like that. I'm not a physicist, so keep that in mind, but for our purposes, this is what the nuclear bomb is like. So in this test, they wanted to see if an asymmetrical explosion of the conventional explosive would create enough pressure for the plutonium to go critical. It did not. The last test the US did with nukes was in 1992, just before the negotiations started for the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. Now, while the US did voluntarily nuke itself, mostly in Nevada, they also kind of accidentally nuked themselves. So in the late 50s, the US was getting paranoid. They were worried that if the Soviet Union was able to get a first strike on the US and disable all their airfields, they would not be able to retaliate and ensure mutually assured destruction. The government was basically like, what if the Russians send a bunch of bombers our way and destroy everything? I mean, I doubt they'd be able to do that. We have great fighter interceptors and radar systems. Not to mention that we would probably be able to get our bombers in the air before they retaliate. And the threat of retaliation is basically enough to ensure they won't attack. But what if they do attack and they make their way through all of our defenses and destroy all of us before we can get our bombs in the air? We have to make sure that if they destroy us, we destroy them. How can we do that? We could just keep our bombers in the air constantly for a decade, I guess. So that's what they did. Operation Chrome Dome started in the late 50s and ran through to the end of the 60s. The brutally simple, very American solution of just having bombers in the air 24/7 kind of worked. The Russians didn't attack. However, the US was making a metaphorical omelet, and they were going to break a few metaphorical eggs. Now you see, nuclear bombs plus 1950s era plane technology basically ensures that there's going to be some accidents. Now, there were some accidents before Chrome Dome, however, Chrome Dome accelerated them because they were having the planes in the air for so long that sometimes the pilots just made mistakes or the planes just failed. In 1961, over Yuba, California, a B-52 crashed, dropping 2 thermonuclear bombs. They didn't go off and there was not an enormous explosion. Later that same year, the US dropped a couple more nukes over Goldsboro, North Carolina, when a B-52 broke up midair. Now, again, neither one of these bombs exploded. However, there was a cleanup effort. The first bomb was recovered without too much issue. The second one, though, had buried itself, and after a long time of digging, the government just gave up. It's still there, and there are regular radiation tests done, but there's nothing to worry about. Now, I know these aren't technically speaking nuclear explosions done on US soil, but I'm stretching the definition of nuked to include these because I find them interesting. The US was not content only dropping bombs on itself, though. Through the Chrome Dome operation, they also accidentally dropped nuclear bombs on Spain and Greenland. Again, these bombs didn't go off. However, the radioactive material did need to be cleaned up in these areas, as they had caused contamination. Between the over 1,000 tests and the multitude of accidents, the US has had quite the history with nuclear weapons. I wonder how many times the Soviets nuked themselves.